The Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister appeared insulted that Canada's closest ally would take this kind of action.
Let me be clear. These tariffs are totally unacceptable.
Justin Trudeau lashed out at the American suggestion that any Canadian product could pose a threat to U.S. national security.
Canadians have served alongside Americans in 2 world wars and in Korea. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of Afghanistan.
Chrystia Freeland announced Canada's $16 billion retaliation plan, dollar-for-dollar tariffs on American steel and aluminum and more.
This is the strongest trade action Canada has taken in the post-war era.
Freeland's list also has non-metal items selected to inflict political consequences on U.S. lawmakers. It includes pickles from Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan's home state of Wisconsin, bourbon, since it's made in Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's home state of Kentucky, and Florida orange juice from a state which was crucial to Donald Trump's victory.
It's a very troubling day, and it's another blow to Canada's economy.
The Conservatives are frustrated with the way the Liberals have handled this situation. After Trump took office, Trudeau tried to charm the new U.S. administration to ensure amicable trade would continue between the two countries. It appears the positive pitch has not resonated with the president, leaving Trudeau to hope this new punitive measure will be heard loud and clear.
We have to believe that at some point, common sense will prevail. But we see no sign of that in this action today by the U.S. administration.
Canada's tariffs won't kick in for another month, Rosie. The government wants to consult to make sure no Canadians are inadvertently affected.
Okay, Donald Trump also said Canada and Mexico could have avoided all this if a NAFTA deal had been reached. Today, we learned something pretty interesting from the Prime Minister, Katie.
Trudeau says he reached out to Donald Trump, offering to travel to the White House to negotiate the final details of NAFTA in person. But there was a catch.
I got a call from Vice President Pence on Tuesday in which it was impressed upon me that there was a precondition to us being able to get together. That Canada would accept a sunset clause for NAFTA. I had to highlight that there was no possibility of any Canadian Prime Minister signing a NAFTA deal that included a 5-year sunset clause, and obviously the visit didn't happen.
A sunset clause would kill the trade agreement in 5 years, Rosie, and Canada and Mexico believe it would create too much instability to actually work. There are no plans for those NAFTA talks to resume, and today's developments will certainly not be welcomed by negotiators.
Katie Simpson in Ottawa tonight. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks.
And joining us now from our Washington bureau is Keith Bowe. Keith, this is a hard question, but why is this happening? What do we think is the Trump strategy here?
Well, I can tell you, Rosie, there is a great deal of skepticism here about whether there actually is a strategy. What there is a consistent and apparently genuinely held belief on the part of the president that protectionism can bring jobs back to America. You heard it over and over again in the campaign when he said the U.S. isn't treated fairly in trade agreements and that under his leadership, the U.S. would no longer be played for a sucker. And for the sake of making good on all that, he's apparently prepared to spark a tit-for-tat trade war with China, with Europe, and with Canada. And he's prepared to do that in the face of criticisms from his own advisors in the White House and Republicans on Capitol Hill who say that he's trying to turn back the clock on the complex and interrelated trade rules of the modern world and use U.S. economic might to try to bully it, even its own neighbors.
So I guess the question is, does that work? Can it work? The U.S. is a really powerful player in the world. Can it get by insulating itself and bullying its way to where it wants to go?
Well, Trump seems to think so. And so apparently does his point man on this, the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross. Here's what he said earlier about whether there was a significant downside.
These are blips in the radar screen. I don't think they change the fundamentals of relationship. Everybody has spats every now and again. Every family does, every country does with others. There's nothing weird about that. I think everybody will get over this in due course.
But there are a lot of American businesses and investors who don't think so, who say no one wins a trade war. Look at the stock market today. The Dow Jones down 250 points. That's fear. fear of an escalating trade war. The IMF said recently the #1 threat to global economic growth is a trade war, and the U.S. would not be immune from that. In spite of low unemployment here, economic growth has been relatively modest and significantly short of what Trump has said his administration would produce. So in that sense, his actions could well be counterproductive and undermine even his own goals.
Now, Canada and Europe seem to be targeting their tariffs at industries in Trump country. Is that an effective tactic as a response?
Absolutely it is. Targeting Harley-Davidson motorcycles or Kentucky bourbon is taking the fight right to Trump's base. It's a threat to the jobs of the very people Trump promised would not be left behind. And Trump supporters who couldn't care less about things like the Russia investigation or who Ivanka Trump does business with care just as much as anybody about their jobs. And Trump, of course, has the midterm elections to worry about. Yeah. They're just 6 months away.
CBC's Keith Bogan, Washington. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie.